I am just waiting a little while to let a few people come on. Yeah, they're definitely Satanists. Everything they do is a lie. And liars are going to get their judgment. This is the last session in the Northeast Private Information Share. The semi-annual one, so it'll be this event until November. Biannual, I guess. Biannual event. No, it would be semi-annual event. Biannual will be 2 years. We'll be having another one in November. Hopefully. If everything works out. All of the videos are up on YouTube as unlisted. And the Patreon, if you're a Patreon member, you'll have access to them. And ultimately, at some point, I'll list them. I'll make them public. But right now, they're going to be unlisted for my Patreons and my exclusive video people on my exclusive on my website. So if you want to watch them now, then I would suggest get a subscription or join Patreon. I guess we'll get started. This one's about Attorney 7 bar members are Satanists. Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Civil law, Roman civil law are convertible phrases meaning the same system of jurisprudence. That rule of action which every particular nation, commonwealth, or city has established peculiarly for itself, more properly called municipal law. So they're all convertible phrases, and if you remember, it's called the rules of civil procedure, right? That's civil law. Let him who will be deceived be deceived. That's a Roman law maxim. They lie, they cheat, they steal. They're just nothing but a bunch of criminals, really, is what they are, assaulting people. In the Bible, everybody that's in prison was sold into slavery, and those people should all be put to death. Not the people that are in prison, the people that put them there. They should be put to death. And if we were a Christian nation, that kind of stuff wouldn't be happening. Obviously, we're not a Christian nation. You know, Mark Passio says 70 to 90% of Americans are practicing Satanists, and I think he's right. First of all, I'm not a liar. Well, I'm a lawyer. You should never take my word for anything. You should always do your own research. I provided references to aid you in your research, but I don't know everything. I'm open to any ideas. There's 4 types of people you'll meet in your life. There's the people who try to wake up the slaves. I like to think I'm one of those. There's the slave masters. There's the people who have no idea they're slaves. And there's the people who like being slaves. I guess you could say the bar members are the slave masters. Which one are you? Do you really know for sure? Are you who you think you are? If you can see through the illusion, then you are the solution. If the people do not know their basic rights and freedoms, then how can they know when or if their rights and freedoms are being infringed? And that's a lot of what I do. The video, the PowerPoint presentation we went through this morning is about war crimes, to go through and explain how war crimes are happening all the time, and people are completely oblivious to it. And I file war crimes complaints, and they don't want to talk to me. I kind of like it that way. I still file the complaints. The best defense is a good offense. You got to remember, it's warfare. Okay, this is warfare. They're not your friend, they're your enemy. And the best defense is a good offense. Never forget the men who started this country were marijuana growing, whiskey drinking, tax evading rebels who left their beds at night to shoot at the pigs. And that's true. George Washington was a hemp farmer. I think that is something that we should all be looking up to. All tyranny needs to gain a foothold is for people of good conscience to remain silent. Well said, Thomas Jefferson. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. I don't trust the military industrial complex. I don't trust the mainstream media. I don't trust the bankster criminal cabal that owns the government, owns the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex, owns the military industrial complex, and owns the mainstream media. If you call me a conspiracy theorist, I don't trust you. Government's not reason, it's not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. Educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They're the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. That's right. That's what I'm trying to do. Most of the people are asleep at the wheel and they want to stay that way. Remember the 4 kinds of people. Whenever the people are well informed, they can be trusted with their own government. An informed citizenry is the heart of a dynamic democracy. Educate and inform the whole mass of the people, and they're the only sure reliance on the preservation of our liberty. If once the people become inattentive to the public affairs, you and I and Congress and assemblies, judges and governors shall all become wolves. Seems to be the law of our general nature, in spite of individual exceptions. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. Ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is the liar and the father of it. So, if they lie, then there's no truth in them. But the fearful and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. 21 and 8. Revelations 21 and 8. And Revelations, think about it, it's revealing truth. Albert Pike and Morals and Dogma. Freemasons or Satanists. Lucifer the light bearer, strange and mysterious name to give the spirit of darkness. Lucifer the son of the morning. Is it he who bears the light, and with the splendors intolerable blinds feeble, sensual, selfish souls? Doubt it not. Taken from Morals and Dogma, page 322. And it's called the Texas Rules of Civil Procedure, or the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. It's all civil law. That's Roman law. Let he who is willing to be deceived be deceived. They lie, they cheat. That's why that bought and paid for whore will sit up there and lie to you. All mortgages fall under Roman law, negotiable instrument law. Federal Reserve notes, stocks, bonds, etc. is a subset of Roman law. Bar members write all mortgage contracts. Bar members have decided every detail involving Roman law in America. Have bar members told you the nature of mortgages or negotiable instruments? Absolutely not. Matter of fact, that all puts you into international law too. Bar members operate in international law. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. Corporation is owned by the government. If it's subject to regulations, it's owned by the government. The same thing applies in Canada. Canadian Ownership and Control Determination Act. Owned means subject to the regulations. Every corporation, for all its purposes, is an agent of Her Majesty in right, the bitch, and right of Canada. So, corporations are owned by the government. You incorporate into the government. That's what you do. In 1933, Hitler appointed Hermann Goering Minister of the Interior. His first orders was to defund and eliminate the police departments so that they would not interfere with his brown shirts, whose mission it was to riot, burn, beat up, and kill citizens in an effort to sway elections. You think this is anything new? Ours may become the first civilization destroyed not by the power of our enemies, but by the ignorance of our teachers, and the dangerous nonsense they're teaching our children. A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. That's right. That's why they tell us we got a democracy, because they are at war with our rights. A mixed war is one which is made by, on one side by a public authority and the other by mere private persons. Under international law of warfare, all parties to a cause must appear by nom de guerre, because an alien enemy cannot maintain an action during a war in his own name. So, any court case is warfare. All bar members are engaged in secret warfare. Judge works for the state, prosecutor works for the state, police or witness works for the state. Notice the military uniforms for their warfare. The vast majority of the disputes that the police initiate on behalf of their employer are also adjudicated by their employer, where the plaintiff, the judge, the antagonist, the police, and the only witness, also the police, all represent the same party, and since no corpus delicti, mens rea, or acts reus can be produced, doesn't technically qualify to be heard according to its own laws. The state, therefore, is indistinguishable from a criminal cartel. All are military uniforms for their warfare. Judge wears a military uniform, he sits there and plays stupid. If you fail to follow some obscure rule or procedure, they sell you into slavery. Everything they do is a fraud. When acting to enforce a statute, which is always, and as subsequent amendments to the present date, the judge of municipal court is acting as an administrative officer, not in a judicial capacity. Courts administrating or enforcing statutes do not act judicially, but merely ministerially, merely as an extension, as an agent for the involved agency, but only in a ministerially and not a discretionary capacity. They're bought and paid for clerks. It's the accepted rule, not only in state courts, but of federal courts as well, that when a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes, as a bought and paid for clerk for the agency. Judges who become involved in enforcement of mere civil statutes, civil or criminal in nature, and otherwise act as mere clerks of the involved agency. Ministerial officers are incompetent to receive grants of judicial power from the legislature. Their acts in attempting to exercise such powers are necessarily nullities. So they sit up there and they issue orders, and they're all a nullity. They're void. Where there is no jurisdiction, there is no judge. The proceeding is as nothing. Such has been from the law from the days of Marshal Saya. And that's a federal court case, Manning versus Ketchum, quoting Bradley versus Fisher, U.S. Supreme Court, and they're quoting 10 Coke 68, which is Coke in the 1500s. But in fact, and in law, such statutes are intended to be applied to those who are here as residents in the state under the Interstate Commerce Clause of the Federal Constitution and the so-called 14th Amendment. And that's U.S. Supreme Court, United States versus United Mine Workers. That's a summary of that case. The Supreme Court doesn't call it the so-called 14th Amendment. The current so-called 13th Amendment. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist in the United States or in any place subject to their jurisdiction. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. He, the prisoner, has, as a consequence of his crime, not only forfeited his liberty, but all his personal rights, except those which the law and its humanity affords him. He is, for the time being, a slave of the state. So they're sold into slavery is what they've done. And that's bar members. Bar members are doing that. If a man be found stealing any of his brethren of the children of Israel, and maketh merchandise of him, or selleth him, then that thief shall die. Thou shalt put evil away from among you. So these bar member scum ought to get their necks stretched, right? If we're Christians, I mean, are we Christians or are we something else? I think most people are something else. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, to exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may by session of particular states in the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the place shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. So that is the only place the United States has jurisdiction. And yet they assault you all the time with their DC codes. We therefore decline to overrule the opinion of Chief Justice Marshall. We hold that the District of Columbia is not a state within Article 3 of the Constitution. In other words, cases between citizens of the district and those of the state are not included in the catalog of controversies over which Congress could give jurisdiction to the federal courts by virtue of Article 3. In other words, Congress has exclusive legislative jurisdiction over citizens of the Washington District of Columbia, and through their plenary power, that's military dictatorship, folks, nationally covers those citizens even when in one of the several states, as though the district expands for the purpose of regulating its citizens wherever they go throughout the states of the Union. That's National Mutual Insurance Company, the District of Columbia versus Tidewater Transfer Company. International law rule. Adopted for areas under federal legislative jurisdiction. Federalizes state civil law, including common law. The rule serves to federalize not only statutory but the common law of the state. State and federal venue discussed. The civil law is effective in an area of exclusive federal jurisdiction or federal law, notwithstanding their derivation from state laws, and a cause arising under such laws may be brought in or removed to the federal district court under U.S. Code. Jurisdiction over federal areas within the states. Report of the Interdepartmental Committee for the Study of Jurisdiction over Federal Areas within the States, Part 2, a text of the Law of Legislative Jurisdiction submitted to the Attorney General and transmitted to the President June 1957. I think that must have been the Eisenhower administration, I think. Governors like Abbott are issuing their edicts under their military dictatorship to ensure their property, you, is safe. Recall Abbott. Abbott ought to get it. He ought to, I don't know. He certainly seems to have had a change of heart, but, once he gets reelected, who knows what he's going to do. Executive orders are not law. Executive orders are color of law. Executive orders are equivalent to regulations, and regulations are for government property. Color means an appearance, a semblance, a simulacrum as distinguished from that which is real, a prima facie apparent right, a hence a deceptive appearance, a plausible assumed exterior concealing a lack of reality, a disguise, or a pretext. Colorable means that which is in appearance only and not in reality what it purports to be, hence counterfeit, feigned, having the appearance of truth. Color of law, the appearance or semblance without the substance of legal right. Misuse of power possessed by virtue of state law made possible only because wrongdoer is clothed with authority of state, is action taken under color of law. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes were vital forces in the struggle for national supremacy. They formed a part of the public debt of the United States. That's U.S. Supreme Court, I'm not sure which year it was. Juilliard versus Greenman, and that's the point being is that Federal Reserve notes are legal tender notes. National supremacy, right? So everything is national. I don't want to use the word federal. If it was federal, we wouldn't, they'd have nothing to say. It's national. They're tyrants. Article 6, Clause 2. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. So, it's supreme law of the land. Article 9, an amendment. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. At common law, we have unlimited rights. So just because a few rights have been defined in the first 8 amendments to the Constitution doesn't mean there's not more. Our rights are unlimited. Every citizen and freeman is endowed with certain rights and privileges to enjoy which no written law or statute is required. These are fundamental and natural rights recognized among all free people. As a general rule, men have the natural right to do anything which their inclinations may suggest, if it be not evil in itself, and in no way impairs the rights of others. Article 1 of the Libra Code. Remember, the Libra Code is international law, private international law. It's the law of war. And warfare is international law, private international law. It goes back to the Roman cult. A place, district, or country occupied by an enemy stands in consequence of the occupation under the martial law of the invading army or occupying army, whether any proclamation declaring martial law or any public warning to the inhabitants is issued or not. Martial law is the immediate and direct effect and consequence of occupation and conquest. The presence of the hostile army proclaims its martial law. In other words, we got the guns. The Libra Code is also called General Orders 100, which was written by Francis Lieber for Lincoln. It's the law of war for the U.S. Army. Article 2 of the Libra Code. Martial law does not cease during the hostile occupation except by special proclamation ordered by the Commander-in-Chief or by special mention in the Treaty of Peace concluding the war, when the occupation of a place or territory continues beyond the conclusion of peace. So, in Texas or the southern states or Arizona under the Treaty of Hidalgo, there's also the Northwest. There's another treaty for the Northwest where Oregon and Washington became part of the U.S. There's nowhere that has a special mention of a treaty of peace. I've never seen a treaty yet that had any mention of the martial law ending, and I've never seen any special proclamations by the Commander-in-Chief, which in this case would be the President of the United States. Never seen any of that. So you see these military police all over the place. Martial law affects chiefly the police and the collection of public revenue, whether imposed by the expelled government or by the invader. Refers mainly to the support and efficiency of the army, its safety, and the safety of its operations. A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. There at open or secret war is certainly open if you know what to see, and for all the brain-dead idiots out there, it's secret war with the rights of mankind. That's the New World slave flag right there. There's 3 kinds of martial law. There's full martial law. This is taken from Ex parte Milligan, and it's also cited in the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. So there's 3 kinds of martial law. There's the declaration of martial law is issued. Troops are put on the streets. It's used during wartime. It's used on a foreign country or when actually invaded by a foreign power and put down an armed rebellion. Martial law proper is the second kind, law of the armed forces. When a captain tells a private what to do, it's enforced by court-martial. And martial law rule, It's a law of necessity and emergency, allows the domestic use of martial law powers. It's used during times of peace, and it can continue for centuries during a military occupation. That's what we're under, is martial law rule. My new book is now available, Trump, a True American Patriot or Not. Mike Blackwell asked me to read it, or to write it. It actually took me about 2 weeks to write the thing, and then Mike had to babysit me for 6 months to get it ready to publish. So, but it's also 95% provable facts. It was a lawsuit. I basically took a lawsuit and modified it to make the book. And so 95% of its provable facts. I use law dictionary definitions, international treaties, court cases, all sorts of stuff like that. It's provable facts. But there is a little bit of opinion in there too. Not much, but a little bit. Mike he's Sovereign Press is what he is, but he hired a company to help us get it ready, and they put this stuff on the back of the book, and I think it nails it. So I'm going to read, a bunch of what this says, because I think it nails it about what's in the book. It starts off with a quote from Donald Trump's inaugural address in 2016. It says, "What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. At the center of this movement is a crucial conviction that a nation exists to serve its citizens. For too long, a small group of our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government at the cost of its citizens. Washington flourished, but the insiders refused to share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but allowed our jobs to leave and our factories to close. Not anymore." And that's all that is taken from Trump's inaugural address. The rest of it they put in here. In Trump, a True American Patriot or Not, Glenn Fern and Mike Blackwell reveal the depths of corruption, deceit, and manipulation infesting our political system for hundreds of years, regardless of political affiliation. Read the hard evidence that exposes how our elected officials sold Americans into slavery. Understand the Founding Fathers' true intent when they formed our Republican form of government. Discover the influence of the satanic Roman cult on our politicians and political system. Does Donald Trump want to transfer power back to we the people? In Trump, you will see the great battle that is upon us. And they nailed it there, I'll tell you. It is a great battle. Cliff High says it's going to go on for 18 years. So I think that's probably about right. I guess we'll see. We're like a captive audience, aren't we? So you can order the book on Amazon or from my website. If you prefer to order the book from my website, it's SovereigntyInternational.fyi. It's right on the front page, a link to it. Amazon does not provide autographed books, so I'll send you an autographed book. But if you have something in particular you want the autograph to say, you got to let me know. If you want to know the origin of the deep state and who's behind it, you want to know why it's called the Trump administration. Now, one of the things I wanted to say is that there's a lot of hearsay about who the deep state is and all of that stuff, and I put in here what I can prove, and I use international treaties and law dictionary definitions and stuff like that. So I guess what my point is that there could be other people or entities that are the deep state's involved in, and I believe they are, but I can't prove it. And so this is the stuff that's provable, and I think you'll like it. Anyways, do you want to know why it's called a Trump administration? Do you want to know what an administration is? Do you want to know how Trump came to be president? Do you want to know who owns Congress? Yes, that's true. Congress went bankrupt in 1932. 19 years and change after the Federal Reserve was created. 9 months short of 20 years after the Federal Reserve was created. It took them less than 20 years to bankrupt the country. If you want to know how Trump came to be president, oh yes, and who owns Congress? You want to know why they're called law enforcement officers? You want to know how we've become a slave? A lot of that's tied to Federal Reserve notes. Did you know it's impossible to pay a debt with a Federal Reserve note? That's true. It is absolutely impossible to pay a debt with a Federal Reserve note. Matter of fact, the absolute best that you could do with a Federal Reserve note is discharge debt with limited liability. And Federal Reserve notes put you into international law, and so that's all part of how they make you a slave. Because really, if all you have is Federal Reserve notes in your wallet, you know, they're IOUs. Federal Reserve note is an IOU. You know, it's commercial paper, right? All commercial paper falls into two categories. It's either a promissory note or an IOU. I don't care, stocks, bonds, whatever. And a promissory note has to have a promise to pay. Now, it used to be, you know, with the gold certificates and silver certificates, then that was a promissory note because it said that you could go get some gold or silver. But Federal Reserve notes don't say anything like that. So they're nothing more than an IOU. And if all you have in your wallet is IOUs from a bankrupt corporation, then you're bankrupt too. You don't have any money. And so that means you're a pauper. And at common law, a pauper doesn't have any rights. Do you want to know what the root cause of the War of Independence was? Same thing that's going on now. You want to know why every president goes to visit the Pope on their first international trip? That's because he's the owner. That's also because an administrator is an ecclesiastical office. An administrator is an ecclesiastical office. And you have to get appointed to that by the pimp. Well, I meant the Pope. No, he's the pimp. In reality, they're not after me, they're after you. I'm just in the way. Well, thank you, Donald Trump. I think, now this is my opinion, I think the entire Trump administration was a giant military psyop. I don't know if you've heard of Jerome Corsi. Jerome Corsi lives up in the Northeast. He's got a PhD in political science, and he's written a whole bunch of books. He's got a YouTube channel and a website. Anyways, there's a YouTube video where he says that in 2015, 5 generals came to see him, and they were talking about somebody overthrowing Obama. And he said, well, you can do that if you want, but maybe you want to go talk to Donald Trump first. And so 6 months later, he gets a phone call. They decided not to overthrow Obama because Donald Trump had agreed for president. So I think it's all just that's my opinion. That's my opinion. I think it's all a giant military psyop. Matter of fact, I think he's still president. My opinion. I don't know for sure, but I think that's probably true. Anyways, martial law is the public law of necessity. Necessity calls us forth. Necessity justifies its exercise. Necessity measures the extent and degree to which it may be employed. That necessity is no formal or artificial legalistic concept, but an actual and factual one. It's the necessity of take action to safeguard the state against insurrection, riot, disorder, or public calamity. What constitutes a necessity is a question of fact in each case. And that's pretty interesting. A Practical Manual of Martial Law by Frederick B. Weiner, Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human freedom. It's the argument of tyrants. It's the creed of slaves. Tyrants use it as an excuse to take away our rights, and slaves agree to have their rights taken away and say, well, it's a necessity. It's because they want to be a slave. They're idiots. William Pitt the Younger, in a speech to the House of Commons, November 18th, 1783. Wow. The action of Congress in the passage of the first Legal Tender Act was placed distinctly upon the ground of the existing imperative need of government, and a legal tender clause was urged and adopted as a war measure. Martial law. 1884. Juilliard versus Greenman was 1884. U.S. Supreme Court. The only thing that's lawful money is gold or silver coin. Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. No state shall coin money, emit bills of credit, make anything but gold or silver coin, and tender in the payments of debt. That's why they had to, it says no state can emit bills of credit. They went and got a private company, Federal Reserve, to do it. Because the Federal Reserve note is a bill of credit. There is no lawful money in general circulation since 1965. Money means a medium of exchange currently authorized or adopted by a domestic or foreign government. The term includes a monetary unit of account established by an intergovernmental organization or by agreement between two or more countries. And that's Texas Business and Commerce Code, okay? That's international law. That's the private international law. That's Uniform Commercial Code. Party, as distinguished from third party, you know, these bar members like to throw that kind of stuff in there to make it confusing, means a person that has engaged in a transaction and made an agreement subject to this title. So, yeah, right. Somebody who is in the Uniform Commercial Code jurisdiction. That's a party. I can't possibly be a party because I don't consent to the Uniform Commercial Code. Governments descend to the level of a mere private corporation, take on the characteristics of mere private citizen where private corporate commercial paper, Federal Reserve notes, and securities, checks is concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. That's U.S. Supreme Court, Clearfield Trust Company versus United States. So when you go into international law, you're not sovereign. Governments lose their immunity and descend to a level of private corporations when involved in commercial activity, enforcing negotiable instruments as in fines, penalties, assessments, bails, taxes. The remedy lies in the hand of the state as municipality seeking remedy. That's why I don't give them anything. That's why I file criminal complaints for perjury of oath and all sorts of stuff when they think that they want to try and get something. That's why those criminal complaints, go and look at those, watch those videos from yesterday and the day before with all the criminal complaints that I filed and see what they say. That's exactly where I go with it. Congress claiming its martial law power to declare war, suppress insurrections, repel invasions, impose martial law in the United States and never discontinued it. The result was an extension of military and municipal jurisdiction of Congress. But where's the evidence of this? Look at the 13th Amendment, the Civil Rights Act, the legal tender laws, the 14th Amendment, etc., etc., etc. And that's taken from the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. The 14th Amendment is an extension of national military powers presently used in municipal character and enforced by municipal laws stretch far beyond their original limitations, and enforced by Article 1 tribunals. That's right, Article 1 tribunals. Diet versus Turner, again, that's the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. Well, in Canada, Queen's Bench courts, obviously you're in Canada. And does a magistrate only apply to Queen's Bench courts? Um, I don't know. You'd have to look in the Canadian codes. I can tell you in the U.S., a magistrate is any judge, and includes mayors. A mayor is a magistrate. Is a chief magistrate. Matter of fact, the President of the United States is a chief magistrate. So I would say that the Prime Minister is also a magistrate, or maybe it's the Governor General would be a magistrate. They're generals; those are military officers. So then they wouldn't be magistrates. The Governor General's not a magistrate. I don't know who's a magistrate in Canada. That's all martial law. That's why it's called the Governor General and Lieutenant Governor. Those are military ranks. So I don't know who's a magistrate in Canada. You have to look in the codes and see what it says. It'll tell you in their codes. In Texas, I can tell you that all judges are magistrates and mayors, basically. That's it. They actually, there's in my document, you can download my document on challenge to jurisdiction and the demand for an examining trial, and it goes through. It shows you the code. It cites the code that defines who magistrates are, and so. Well, you know that the 14th Amendment wasn't legally or lawfully adopted. They went and used military governors in the southern states to force it on everybody. Matter of fact, there was some northern states that refused to vote for it too. But they went and used military governors to ratify it. So it definitely wasn't. Matter of fact, there's court cases, there's I think there's a Georgia statute, there's a bunch of stuff. It's all administrative. They're Article 1, remember? If you're under the 14th Amendment, it's Article 1. Right here, it talks about it. The 14th Amendment's distinction of national military powers presently used in a municipal character and enforced by municipal laws stretch far beyond their original limitations and enforced by Article 1 tribunals. This is the causes and necessities for taking up arms, 1775. Statutes have been passed extending courts of admiralty and vice admiralty far beyond their ancient limits for depriving us of the accustomed and estimable privilege of trial by jury in cases affecting both life and property, to supersede the course of common law and instead thereof to publish and order the use and exercise of the law martial. And for altering fundamentally the form of government established by charter, we saw the misery to which such despotism would reduce us. Despotism is military dictatorship. So, martial law supersedes and replaces common law. But, having said that, the two jurisdictions can exist at the same time. Depends on, martial law is a contract. You have to volunteer for it. The refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators was probably the prime cause of the revolution. Money manipulators is right. I mean, they're rigging the markets all the time. Look at the silver market and the gold market. They just manipulate it. And that was 200 years ago. Nothing's changed, has it? The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government. Well, I guess the Republican form of government's here somewhere. You have to assert yourself, otherwise they walk all over you and you're a slave. But in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind that there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government and interfering with their relation to each other. The powers of the government and the rights of the citizens under it are positive practical regulations plainly written down. The people of the United States have delegated to it certain enumerated powers and forbidden it to exercise others. Well, they're running away with themselves. That's why people are stealing elections. So a republic is not the law of nations, right? Think about it. A republic is not international law. And so then the question is can they assume? Can they presume? Or are you giving them evidence that you're participating in their international law? Like, for example, if you have Federal Reserve notes in your pocket. The purpose of a republican form of government is to shield we the people from international law. This is the dissenting opinion of Justice Martian Harlan and Downs versus Bidwell, 1901. Two national governments exist, one to be maintained under the Constitution with all its restrictions, and the other to be maintained by Congress outside and independently of that instrument. And that's true. In the Articles of Confederation, it says, the style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. That is the original trust. That's a trust indenture. The Constitution's a trust indenture. And yet, if you look in the passport, and just about everywhere, this is all in my book too, by the way, but if you look everywhere, it's called United States of America. Passport. Remember we talked about passports at the beginning? A passport defined as a written document given to a person or persons by a commander of belligerent forces authorizing him or them to travel unmolested within the district occupied by his troops. Passports are issued by the State Department or similar office in other countries to diplomatic agents and others entering or traveling in foreign countries, which are the same general character as those issued during the war. The latter should, when practicable, have a photograph of the bearer attached. That's the Rules of Land Warfare, 1914 edition. Passport Safe Conduct Safeguards Cartels. Chapter 7, Section 4, Article 276, page 100. Oh, and look at that. There's a Federal Reserve note, and it says, the United States of America. Actually, that's not a Federal Reserve note. That doesn't say anything about the Federal Reserve here. It's a silver certificate. But that's still a negotiable instrument. That's not lawful money, okay? That is a promissory note, is what it is, because it says there is, this says right at the top, this certifies that there is on deposit in the Treasury of the United States of America $1 in silver, payable to the bearer on demand. So there you go. So you can go get the silver. That's a promissory note. And there's a land patent, the first page of the land patent. The United States of America again. That's the first page on the land patent. You don't see the United States of America everywhere. Matter of fact, you hardly ever see it. It's usually United States of America. At common law, only gold and silver were legal tender, and that's an 1820 court case citing Book 2 of the Institutes on the Laws of England, which is Coke in the 1500s. If you want common law, it requires honest measures. If you want common law, you have to have lawful money. That's what real money is. Only gold or silver were legal tender. Okay, at common law. If you want common law, that's the only thing that will work. There is a distinction between a debt discharged and one paid. When discharged, the debt still exists, though divested of its character as a legal obligation during the operation of the discharge. Discharge falls under the law of nations, which is international law. This is a thank you to bar members, okay? There is a distinction between a debt discharged and one paid. It is impossible to pay a debt with the Federal Reserve note. And that's why I use my Form 1020. That's a homemade form. And I say, okay, how do you want me to pay it? And I tell them only your lawyers can answer this. And they never answer it. So then they have to discharge it. Copies of these documents can be found on my website and linked under my recent videos. For a complete set of YouTube videos with private information shares, a DVD with over 50 searchable law dictionaries, and actually a thumb drive. I need to change that. It's a thumb drive. With over 50 searchable law dictionaries, actually there's more, like about 100. And other books and forums, contact me privately at engineerwin@yahoo.com. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept the IOUs, Federal Reserve notes. Let's add in a couple things here. Forced loans, military script, PayPal, gifts, checks, money orders, etc. Send me an email for particulars. Fake money. This is the Gold Reserve Act of 1934, located at 48 Stat 337. As used in this act, the term United States means government of the United States. The term currency of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the United States and includes United States notes and Federal Reserve notes. So Federal Reserve notes are meant for District of Columbia only. Federal Reserve notes are commercial paper. Federal Reserve notes are a forced loan. Federal Reserve notes are IOUs. All commercial paper falls into two categories: promissory notes or IOUs. Promissory notes or IOUs. A requirement for a promissory note is a promise to pay. Gold certificates and silver certificates were promissory notes. You can never pay a debt with a Federal Reserve note. Check out my other videos: Bankster Thieves playlist, Roman cult playlist, bankrupt corporate so-called governments, bar members 1 through 7, do-it-yourself how not to volunteer for the selective service in the draft, martial laws here, do-it-yourself no income tax, do-it-yourself free mail, do-it-yourself kangaroo courts, Canada Border Pigs playlist, bar members and their Satanic Connections playlist. Actually, the 13 families are all Jesuit. They're Jesuit assistancies. That's what they are. There's no such thing as a bank loan. If you, I have a video about that. General Orders 100, Article 37. This rule does not interfere with the right of the victorious invader to tax the people or their property, to levy forced loans, to billet soldiers, or to appropriate property, especially houses, lands, boats, or ships, and churches, for temporary and military use. So that's forced loans, right? That's the Supreme Court talked about that. Cryptocurrency is not a forced loan. Anything can be used as a medium of exchange as long as we agree to it. It's called barter. Gold and silver coin is exchanging one thing of value for something else of value. My blog is SovereigntyInternational.wordpress.com. My website is SovereigntyInternational.fyi. My email address is engineerwin@yahoo.com. My YouTube profile, Sovereign Living. My Facebook community page is deleted. I deleted it due to censorship on the part of Facebook. My private group called Sovereignty International is being deleted. It takes time to delete 17,000 people off your group. Quite frankly, I haven't been on Facebook in months. I have no interest in going there. Unless I'm going to let Facebook profit off of my hard work, then I gotta delete, ban each person off of that group, and otherwise, they're making money off it. So at some point, maybe I'll go there, I don't know. It takes time to ban 17,000 people off a group. There's like about 3 or 4 clicks to each one. Anyways, I got a private group at freelist.org called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants, and a Google private group called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. Follow me on Steemit at Sovereignty International. I also have it's now odyssey.com. There we go. I've also got a Patreon group and a MeWe group. Congress converted the citizenship into opposite of what the founders intended for the purpose of enslaving everybody. That's thanks to the bar members. And while the 14th Amendment does not create a national citizenship, it is the effect of making that citizenship paramount and dominant instead of derivative and dependent upon state citizenship. In other words, under the Constitution, the U.S. citizen always has existed. When the Constitution was written, prior to the Constitution, there was no such thing as a U.S. citizen. When the Constitution was written, there was such a thing as a U.S. citizen, but it was derivative and dependent upon being a state citizen first. And afterwards, after the 14th Amendment, it was paramount and dominant. So you didn't need to be a state citizen to be a U.S. citizen. The term resident citizen in the United States is distinguished from a citizen in one of the several states in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. Citizenship is a political status and may be defined and privilege limited by Congress. Every taxpayer is assessed to a trust having sufficient interest in preventing abuse of the trust to be recognized in the field of this court's prerogative jurisdiction. Henry Boland's, that's a summary from that case. Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. Sad will be the day when the American people forget their traditions and their history and no longer remember that the country they love, the institutions they cherish, and the freedom they hope to preserve were born from the throes of an armed resistance to tyranny and nursed in the rugged arms of fearless men. Roger Sherman, signer of the Declaration of Independence. No joke. Slater's protestations to the effect that he derives no benefit from the United States government have no bearing on his legal obligations to pay income tax. Unless the defendant can establish that he's not a citizen of the United States, the IRS possesses authority to attempt to determine his federal tax liability. DC code that was passed after Downs versus Bidwell was filed with the Supreme Court, but before they released their decision, which makes you wonder if it was as a result of their, they told the Department of Justice what they were going to say. Because Downs versus Bidwell came out in like July or August, and this 31 stat came out in like March or April, and Downs versus Bidwell was filed at the Supreme Court in January. So it's kind of interesting. Yet still it was found difficult to set bounds to ecclesiastical ingenuity. That's the Roman cult, folks. For when they're driven out of all their former holes, they devised a new method of conveyance by which lands were granted, not to themselves directly, but to nominal fees to the use of the religious houses. That's the Roman cult, folks. Thus distinguishing between the possession and the use and receiving the actual profit, while a season of the land remained in the nominal fee, who was held by the courts of equity. That's the Roman cult, folks. Then under the direction of the clergy, the Roman cult, to be bound in conscience to account to assisticate use for the rents and emoluments of the state. That's taxes. And it is these inventions that our practitioners are indebted for the introduction of uses and trusts, the foundation of modern conveyancing. And that's Tomlin's Law Dictionary, 1835 edition, volume 2, under the definition of mortgage name. And that can be found at Title 15, United States Code, Section 44, is the definition of a corporation that includes the Sesticate Trust. This definition could easily include the Sesticate Trust. Corporation shall be deemed to include any company, trust, so-called Massachusetts trust or association, incorporated or unincorporated, which is organized to carry on business for its own profit or that of its members, and has shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. And it goes through the same definition without shares of capital or capital stock or certificates of interest. And that would be the Sesticate Trust, would fall into the second definition. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. That's Article 4, Section 2. Is the state of Texas required to follow federal regulations? Of course it is. Well, then it's property of the United States. Banks are international law. Military dictatorships, international law. Uniform Commercial Code is international law. All codes, rules, and regulations are all international law. Forced loans is probably the single most important thing for a military dictatorship. It makes it so the courts presume that you do not pay a debt. You discharge it with limited liability. It makes everybody into paupers, and paupers have no rights, except what they allow you to have. Gold is the money of kings, silver is the money of gentlemen, barter is the money of peasants, debt is the money of slaves. Federal Reserve was set up under the insurance laws of the United States. Federal Reserve notes are worthless insurance script. Anything purchased with worthless insurance script is the property of the issuer of the script. Taxes are the fee for using the private money system. Single most important requirement for a Republican form of government is lawful money. Lawful money is not Federal Reserve notes, it's not bank notes, it's not forced loans, it's not discharged debts, it's not international law. Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God. Therefore, non-resistance to tyrants is obedience to Satan. True. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow me on Steam at Sovereignty International. Don't forget to like this video. On YouTube, don't forget to click the bell next to the subscribe button so you're notified when there's a new upload. On Steam it, don't forget to vote and make your comments. That's the front page of my channel. The subscribe button is already clicked over by the arrow. The arrow is pointing at the bell. The bell has not been clicked because otherwise it would look like it's vibrating. So you have to click on the bell too to get notifications. What is called proclaiming martial law is no law at all, but merely for the sake of public safety and circumstance of great emergency, setting aside all law and acting under military power. And that's 8 Attorney General's opinion, 365 and 367, February 3rd, 1857. That's why they had to pass statutes for common law offenses. That's why all statutes are edicts under martial law. We can't even begin to count the number of times lawyers, judges, and statesmen have said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by statutes. They would be more truthful if they said there isn't any common law anymore. It's been replaced by martial law. And that's the non-ratification of the 14th Amendment by Judge H. Eller to the Utah Supreme Court in the case Diet versus Turner. There's no common law offenses against the United States, only those acts which Congress has forbidden with penalties for disobedience of its command or crimes. Under Texas law, no act or omission is a crime unless made so by statute. Legislature might create an offense and the same enactment provide exceptions to its applications. And all of this is thanks to bar members. Under military dictatorship, there is no law, which is why they're required to pass statutes for common law crimes like murder and assault. This creates civil law, which creates democracy. Under a military dictatorship, you have a democracy. Democracy is international law. A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. Negotiable instrument law is a subset of Roman law. Mortgages are Roman law. Roman law is international law. Bar Treaty of 1947 falls under the United Nations. I have exclusive content available on my website and on Patreon. My website has 2 subscription levels and I accept cryptocurrencies. $49.99 a year for the basic subscription level for the videos only. $79.99 a year for the videos plus unlimited consultations, but they do have limits. In other words, I'm not a liar. Well, I'm an attorney. But I can tell you what I would do under certain circumstances and where to get the forms. The only power these New World Order Satanists have over us is through fraud and deception, and my agenda is to expose it for all our benefit. But I cannot fight all the battles. I need other people doing it too and being on point. Some of the exclusive content is an Arlington private information share. Land deed training, I need to make another one because that is updated. Estoppel certificates training, foreclosure estoppel certificates training, corporate denial training, toll roads notice of demand training, invoice training, notice of void judgment training, revocation of signature training, third-party witness training, federal habeas corpus training, revocation of voter registration, criminal complaint training. I've got a couple of videos up about that, but I need to put up another one because it's changed. Lawsuit training, I've got one video on that. I need to do more. Other training requests, depending on if it's something that I haven't already done or something that I can do. And then the Northeast Private Information Share videos are up there too. All forms, files, and other instructions are available for free, linked on my videos and on my website. All exclusive content will be on my website, and you can buy a subscription there. The website, when you go to the front page of the website, you will see a link to free videos and a link to free files. They've been telling people for decades that we're in a democracy. Do you think that's an accident? That's all thanks to these bar member scum. That's why I like going after the bar members. They're the low-hanging fruit. They're deemed to know the law. You can file bar grievances against them, and that gets their attention. Anything gets their attention. I'm telling you. A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. If you, even right now, if you know what to look for, it's an open warfare, and if you are asleep at the wheel, then it's a secret warfare. Right now, the warfare is going on. Whereas taxation by the Parliament of Great Britain for the purpose of raising a revenue in His Majesty's colonies, provinces, and plantations in North America have been found by experience to great uneasiness and disorders. Well, no shit, Batman. That from and after the passing of this Act, King and Parliament of Great Britain will not impose any duty, tax, assessment, or whatever payable on any of the colonies, provinces, or plantations in North America or the West Indies, except only such duties as may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. And that's George III, Chapter 12, 1778. 2 years. 2 years after the Declaration of Independence. Taxes caused the War of Independence. If they can tax you, then you are their slave. You are forced to work for them for nothing. It is becoming more and more difficult to be free. A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or its permission. McCullough versus Maryland, U.S. Supreme Court, 1819. Tax is an impost, a tribute imposed on the subject, an excise, tallage. In public law, taxation signifies the system for raising money for public purposes by compelling the payment by individuals of sums of money called taxes. Some general principles of taxation have been said to be: 1. The subjects of every state ought to contribute to the support of the government as nearly as possible and proportionate to their respective abilities. That is, in proportion to the revenue which they respectively enjoy under the protection of the state. In the observation or neglect of this maxim consists of what is called the equality or inequality of taxation. That's the Dictionary of English Law, Sweet and Maxwell, London, 1959. There's two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by the sword and the other is by debt. This Constitution and the laws of the United States will be made in pursuant thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges of every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. A republic is the only form of government not secretly, not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. We can have a benevolent dictator or a tyrant dictator. Obama was a textbook tyrant. Pelosi gets up and tells the House we can't read this bill until after we approve it. According to Lindsey Williams, God intervened. We, the people, are the rightful masters of both Congress and the courts, not to overthrow the Constitution, but to overthrow the men who would pervert the Constitution. When the debate is lost, slander becomes the tool of the losers. Racist is someone who wins an argument against a liberal. Tyranny is defined that which is legal for the government but illegal for the citizenry. What country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. There you go. That's why we have the right to keep and bear arms. The Constitution is not a document for the government to restrain the people. It's an instrument for the people to restrain the government. Today it's the unborn child, tomorrow it's likely to be the elderly or those who are incurably ill. Who knows, but that a little later it may be anyone who has political or moral views that do not fit into the distorted new order. It's not murder. Jews aren't actually people. It's not murder. Babies aren't actually people. Child sacrifice in 1515 and in 2015. A nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves. If fascism ever comes to America, it will come in the name of liberalism. All executive orders or regulations for property, slaves of the government, and therefore a color of law. Color of law is something that looks like law but isn't. It's a felony to violate your rights under the color of law. They can violate your rights as long as they can claim good faith. All of this is brought to you by lawyers. Tell them it's a felony and have witnesses. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me, Exodus 20:3. The New World Order will require that you worship government. That is going on in China right now with Falun Gong, that they are doing their organ harvesting programs. The greatest tyrannies are always perpetrated in the name of the noblest causes. Ain't that the truth? The strongest reason for the people to retain their right to keep and bear arms is as the last result to protect themselves against tyranny and government. No joke. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Time to get unplugged. We're in the final stages of the communist takeover, and we need to be prepared for anything. Remote viewers and futurists have said that for years that there will be a point in time when there are riots in every major city and a great nation will disappear in one day. The Bible says an hour. Then there will be wars between the states. Providence favors the prepared. Wondering why Antifa seems so familiar? Let's see. The Nazis hate individualism, communists hate individualism, and Antifa hates individualism. The Nazis hate free speech, communists hate free speech, and Antifa hates free speech. The Nazis hate free markets, the communists hate free markets, and Antifa hates free markets. The Nazis hate elections, the communists hate elections, and Antifa hates elections. The Nazis approve of violence, the communists approve of violence, and Antifa approves of violence. There's no difference between communism and socialism except the means of achieving the same ultimate end. Communism proposes to enslave men by force, socialism by vote. It's merely the difference between murder and suicide. Ain't that the truth? It's the duty of the patriot to protect his country from its government. It's all about territorialism. For a U.S. citizen, every state is a territory. They're still limited by Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, and Article 6, Clause 2. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, to exercise exclusive jurisdiction in all cases whatsoever over such district, not exceeding 10 miles square, is made by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress, become the seat of government, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. That's Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. Article 6, Clause 2, this Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made, or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the constitutional laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which is Treaty 95-20. And Article 1 says all people have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status. And so we determine our political status, not some bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge, and not some low intelligence hired thug. Almost all judges, state and federal, are bar members. Bar members run every corporation, directly or indirectly. 70-90% of Congress and every state legislature is bar members. Bar members control the legislation. All prosecutors are bar members. Officers of the court have no immunity when violating a constitutional right, for they're deemed to know the law. This is the Bar Treaty of 1947. Resolved that the American Bar Association notes with approval the further progress made within the structure and charter of the United Nations at the recent Inter-American Conference for the Maintenance of Continental Peace and Security held at Brazil, implementing the Act of Chapultepec, strengthening further the spirit of friendly communications and of submission to law-governed procedures. Yeah, that's their law. A republic is the only form of government which is not eternally at open or secret war with the rights of mankind. You're of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh of lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. That's John 8:44. That's these Satanists. with their Roman cult sesticate trust and their criminal conversion and all the stuff that they're doing. Bar members are liars, thieves, and murderers. Bar members know exactly what they're doing. Bar members are directly responsible for everything bad that is going on right now. But the fearful and the unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and all idolaters, all liars, shall have their place and their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone. So bar members are the low-hanging fruit. I file criminal complaints against them, and I use the criminal complaints as evidence for bar grievances and judicial complaints. The bar members are the problem. All of the problems can be directly connected to bar members. Anybody have any questions or want to talk about something? Well, the postal procedures are the same. Postal per queue, you can use postal per queue. A lot of it depends on your local state. You know, how well you have them trained, quite frankly. You can use postal per queue, or you can use free mail. Postal per queue is free, or the 2-cent mail. 2-cent mail works good too. Depends on the state that you're in, how well you have them trained. Well, if you have a county sheriff that is inclined to work with you, that's good. Some county sheriffs will and some won't. Accept their oath of office and give them a chance to perjure it, and if they do honor it, then that's great. And if they don't, then you'll have evidence that they're perjuring their oath of office. The Republic of Texas is doing a lot of things, um, and that's one thing I would like to say is I'm a senator with the Republic of Texas, and what happened is when everybody knows Texas was a sovereign nation, a republic at one time, and what happened was when any sovereign nation becomes part of another sovereign nation, they do a treaty of annexation. And Texas did do a treaty of annexation and sent it to the U.S. Senate for approval and adoption. And the U.S. Senate didn't approve it. Matter of fact, I think that Texas joined the Confederacy, as in under the Articles of Confederation, because what they did was a House Joint Resolution. And so, but everything's different in Texas, and I think it's because Texas is treated differently. Texas is still a sovereign nation, and they know it. And so anyway, some people figured this out back in the 90s, and they formed a provisional government of the Republic of Texas, and then they held elections, and they started operating the Republic of Texas. And so I'm a senator. We have Congress. We hold Congress once a month in Keene, Texas, which is south of Fort Worth, about 30 miles. Alvarado, near Alvarado, or Cleburne. Anyways, there's a Supreme Court case. Matter of fact, maybe I'll just show that on this live stream. Yeah, that's going to be hard to get the sheriff to arrest the judge. We're still working on that. I mean, those are all de facto courts anyways. Really, what your solution is have a common law court, and really, yeah, there's a lot of people that are incompetent. You're right. Let me find that Texas court case. Okay, this is that Texas court case. November 16th, 1995. It was to the Dan Morales, who was Attorney General at the time. Case number 95-1002. Henry, the people of the Republic of Texas, by and through Richard McLaren, their legal diplomatic representative, as acting ambassador, consul general, and legal affairs officer for the Territorial Land District. Dear Counsel, the Supreme Court of Texas dismissed the above numbered style proceeding for want of jurisdiction, so they don't have jurisdiction. I, John T. Adams, Clerk of the Supreme Court, as official custodian of the records of said court, do hereby certify the foregoing page is a true and correct copy of the letter showing disposition of case number 95-1002, the people of the Republic of Texas, by and through Richard L. McLaren, as the same appears of record in the minutes of said court under the date shown. And here's a certificate. So that's it right there. So that's where the Supreme Court of Texas said they don't have jurisdiction over the Republic of Texas. So what they do is they always say, well, we don't recognize you. And I tell them, well, I don't need your recognition. Well, I think that, quite frankly, from what some people have said recently, is I think the United States is about to break up anyways, but that's not necessarily going to be good. Really, the real solution is to get control of the federal government. Right now, it's owned and operated by the Roman cult, and that's the problem. So the real solution is to get control of the federal government. And that's where we made a mistake. We allowed it to be put into bankruptcy and seized by the creditors. And the creditors happen to be the Roman cult. They're Satanists, they're liars, they're thieves. You know, I heard, and again, this is hearsay, and I have no idea if it's true or not, but that when the election, they found that the signal was going through a satellite over in Italy that was leased by the Italian government to the Vatican. And so when that happened, there's an Italian corporation where a bunch of people resigned, and like the board of directors resigned, and there was a big shakeup in this government Italian corporation, and the U.S. went and seized, from what I heard, like 250 airplane loads of gold, and that they seized from the Vatican, and I wouldn't be surprised. But so I don't know. You know, this is all hearsay at this point. I have no idea. So, but the point is that so there's, you know, if this stuff is true, you know, that just took care of our national debt problem. Really, is what it did. 250 airplanes full of gold. you're talking C5s, you know, these big airplanes, the biggest airplane in the world, full of gold, much gold as they can carry. You know, you're talking a lot of gold. So, anyways, you know, I don't know. That's what I've heard. I heard it from a couple different sources that are unrelated. So, to me, it adds some validity to it. But at the end of the day, you know, until I hear more about it, you know, I don't know. I've heard that the White House is vacant and there's nobody in it. There's people that have gone there and done YouTube videos, talked about how the grass is all overgrown, nobody's mowing the grass, which would be consistent with it not being occupied, and Biden is running his stuff from a movie set in California and one in Georgia, and I can tell you for a fact, you know, when the airplane that Biden comes off of is not a 747. I can tell you that for a fact, because I've worked on airplanes all my life. That's not a 747. That's a 787 is what it is. And so that's not a 747. And I suspect that Trump has the 747. And I don't know. It's all rumors and stuff like that right now. Who knows? I think they're building a case against him. The stuff that's going on with Ukraine, I think that I don't know. Maybe Putin's even helping. You know, they got all these biological biolabs, bio-warfare labs that that the Russians are taking out in Ukraine. So, I don't know. That's just a lot of rumors. That's all there is. It's all hearsay. I agree. Everybody's got to be educated about the law. That's the only way that we can do it. Yep. Even Cliff High is coming out and talking about changing your status. From a U.S. citizen to a state national. Because we're all state nationals is what we are. There is no U.S. citizen. U.S. citizen's a fictitious entity. U.S. citizen's a slave. We're all state nationals is what we are. And everything that's going on is the illusion. And people have to just walk away from it. It's what you have to do. You have to understand what's happening and just walk away from it. So it's one step at a time. That's all I can say. There's a Chinese curse. May you live in, May you live in interesting times. May you live in, I think it's interesting times. That's a Chinese curse. I think we're living in interesting times. anyways, does anybody have any questions? It's about all I've got. So now's the time to say something. If you have some questions or want to talk about something, we got about another half hour to go. If you go to my website, you'll find that on the front page is my book, and there's a link to free files and free videos. And the free videos is all of the YouTube videos, not all of them, but most of them, organized by topics. And so if you want to study by topic, you can do that off of my website. Also, I helped a friend of mine set up a website for suppressed technologies, and he's been holding extraordinary science conferences for 30 years, and where they talk about suppressed technologies, and so that's called Tesla Tech. Is the name of the YouTube channel, Tesla Tech, Teslatech. So I would encourage everybody to. I think that we're going into an age of anti-gravity and free energy and all of that, and so we all have to, that's all stuff that we're going to be starting to do, and so we're going to have to. I went to one of those conferences back in 2007, and there was a scientist there that had patented a free energy device, and as soon as he patented it, the military immediately classified it, and so he wasn't able to release it. Yeah, zero-port energy. So there's the website, or the YouTube channel is called Tesla Tech. His website is called teslatech.info, and he's got, we've uploaded, he's been doing the conferences for 30 years, and he hasn't got a YouTube channel. I helped him, I set up a YouTube channel for him, and we've been uploading videos, and so there's a lot of videos up there that you can use as part of your research. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, I think that's the wave of the future. Zero-point energy, exactly. There's videos on done by people who are researching that stuff. So what we need to do is network. Actually, what I heard is that Tesla, his father was given free access to the Vatican archives, and so his father took Tesla in there with him, and Tesla was young, and so Tesla sat there and read those books all day. And I think that's probably where he got that stuff from. I don't know. That's what I heard. That's hearsay. But Tesla definitely, he patented a bunch of permanent magnet motors. He patented a bunch of things, and he definitely was the most prolific inventor of his time. And so every time he did every picture that was ever taken from him, I heard, I don't know, but I heard that every picture that was ever taken of him, he had a book, a certain book in his hands. I'm going to go and find that book because I got a digital version of it. I went and got it on eBay, written by a Jesuit in the 1700s by the name of Boscovich. And so this is the book. I'm going to show it here. This is the book. This is a PDF. You can just order it. You can go online and search for it and come up with it easily. And it talks about the ether. It's pretty interesting. I haven't read all of it. The Life of Roger Joseph Boscovich. And so Theory of Natural Philosophy. You can order hard copies of this book on eBay. They're not that expensive. I got one. It's a paperback actually. And what happens is Theory of Natural Philosophy, you got one side that's in English, and the other side, this is the introduction. He goes into right. Parts of it in English and parts of it are in, well, that's still English. Parts are in Latin. Here it's in Latin. So it's not as bad, because obviously you can't read the Latin, so you just read the English. Anyway, so there's one page in English and another page in Latin. So it actually goes pretty quick. But anyways, I would recommend everybody should get that book at least. And it's written in the 1700s. It talks about the ether and a lot of stuff that modern day science. See, Einstein, they asked Einstein one time, they said, how does it feel to be the smartest man in the world? And Einstein said, I don't know, ask Nikola Tesla. So I guess what my point is that this is the book that Nikola Tesla was seen with all the time when he was, I heard that every picture that they took of him, he had that book in his hand. Anyways, I don't know. That's just more hearsay. So, yeah. Yeah, right. Everything's in frequencies. I agree. It's all energy. Your skin is an energy field. And they try and keep this stuff hidden from us. That's why they went and, in my opinion, why they pushed Einstein, because his theories were not the same as Tesla's, and they were even Einstein knew that Tesla was the smart guy, in my opinion. So, is there anything else anybody wants to talk about? I'm familiar with Atlantis. I've heard, actually, I think that Atlantis might be in Antarctica. I think that it might be Antarctica now. I've heard there's stories about giant UFOs that they found down there that are frozen in the ice, that are like 30 miles across. Tell a story about being pulled over on the way to Bill and Becky's by Walker County. Well, what about it? There's a YouTube video about that. I wasn't on the way to Bill and Becky's. I was on the way to Waco, actually, from Bill and Becky's area. Yes. Well, there's a lot of, they say that Mars was actually a moon around a planet that is now the asteroid belt. And in Star Wars, where that planet in the first episode, The New Hope, that they published, where that they build that space station that looks like a moon, and it destroys the planet. They're saying that actually happened in our star system, and the planet is now the asteroid belt. And Mars was a moon around it. Mars had an ocean, and so then what happened is there was a bunch of refugees that came from there, and 3 giant UFOs, and they crash landed in what was then Atlantis with these 3 giant UFOs, and their UFOs were damaged. They couldn't fly them anymore, but I've heard they found these 3. Remember, at the end of the Obama administration, Obama went and flew down to Antarctica, and there's a bunch of other people that flew down there, and so anyways, what happened is they found these 3 giant UFOs down there, and there's a bunch of dead bodies that are 14 feet tall, 6 fingers and 6 toes, and curly red hair, and like hundreds of dead bodies frozen in the ice down there. And there's systems in these UFOs that are still functioning, and there was another YouTube video I listened to that was by this guy that was in the U.S. Army, and his voice was disguised, and he said that he was in the U.S. Army in Afghanistan, and they were assigned to go and find out what happened to a platoon that had disappeared, and they were in the mountains. They found this cave, and there was a bunch of their equipment in front of the cave, or broken pieces of it in front of this cave. And so they were kind of alerted, and this guy came out of the cave that was 14 feet tall, curly red hair, 6 fingers and 6 toes, had a spear, and started spearing them, and they all opened up on him with their automatic weapons, and it didn't seem to be affecting him, and so they said aim for his head, and they killed him, and they went and got a helicopter to come in and take him away, and he weighed 1,200 pounds. Anyways, so then there's stories in Russia how they used to go on giant hunting expeditions back in the 30s and stuff like that too. I don't know. These are all stories. Don't know. It wouldn't surprise me. They try and hide that kind of stuff, Yeah, I think that they are the Nephilim giants. I think that this war is literally a war of good versus evil right now, and they're trying to take over, and so I guess we'll see. I read a book called The Lost Book of Enki, which is by Zecharia Sitchin, and which is along the same line. according to that book, there's a planet called Nibiru, that's in our sun is a binary star system. Yeah, I've got lots of videos on allodial title, so if you want to watch the videos, and then if you want me to send my latest land patent, latest deed, I'll be happy to send it to you. Scott, yeah, okay, I think I remember. It's been a while. Yeah, there's actually nobody here right now. Yeah, 1871 they set up a corporation for the District of Columbia. That's the second Downs versus Bidwell said there's two national governments. One operates within the Constitution, the other one does not. Well, I like the Republic of Texas. I mean, that's a networking thing. It's good to actually meet with like-minded people. There's no background noise here. I don't know what you're talking about. Must be your end. Oh, I'm not hearing anything. Well, if nobody's got anything, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. Yes, I do have stuff on private trusts. I set up private trusts. I'm not seeing any questions from Scott. You said you asked a question. I don't see any questions. How effective do you think bringing Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 19? I've never heard of that. I don't know. I've never heard of that. I don't acknowledge the birth certificate. The birth certificate's a fraud, and I don't acknowledge it. It's a fraud. The Roman cult Sesticate Trust is a fraud. If you go in there and participate in that, you're taking yourself into international law, and I've seen judges will tell them, people will sit there and use a common law argument, and then they'll say how they authenticated the birth certificate, and the judge will say, I think you're crazy, you need your head examined, because they're mixing up common law and international law. You can't do that. You can contact me at my email address at engineerwin@yahoo.com, and I'll be happy to help you for a donation. Well, I wouldn't want to be a trustee under any circumstances. So I don't know what you're talking about. I don't want to be a trustee. I usually, what I'll do is I'll have a structure be a trustee. This is the way I set it up, like a LLC or something like that. And I've never had any trouble. You need to get an EIN, there's no doubt about it. You can use another structure to get an EIN, or there's various ways of doing it, but I don't want to be a trustee. I don't mind being hired as a managing director. Yeah, I accept crypto. Common law card number, I don't know what you're talking about, common law card number. I use the structure to be a trustee. I don't do it myself. And if you want to get an EIN, you're going to have to get give them some sort of number to do it. No, I would not. Would you contact the Treasury as a beneficiary. I'm not a beneficiary of any trust. I have nothing to do with that trust. That trust is a fraud. I have nothing to do with it. Could I please repeat the beginning? How you would get someone? I don't know what you're talking about. Whether HJR 192 applies or doesn't, I don't really care. I don't make those kinds of arguments. The Treasury is the International Monetary Fund. I got nothing to do with them. I'm not interested in their international law scam. They're a bunch of thieves. I mean, really, if you think about it, they're a bunch of thieves. They're perjurers. They perjure their oath of office at the drop of a hat. It's the Roman cult. And you want to go in and do business with the Roman cult with a bunch of thieves? Good luck with that. Well, when you apply for a tax for an EIN, usually the IRS knows whether the number is a valid number in their system or not. Yeah, I like cryptocurrencies. I'd like to have more, quite frankly. I'd like to have more silver, too. I'd like to have some fake money, too. The thing I like about cryptos is that it's not a private money system. It's not run by the banksters. And so you're right, if the power goes out, the government's computers are going to go down too. I don't think they're going to allow that to happen for too long. With cryptos, we don't have to trust each other. Okay, well, I guess that's about it. We're going to wrap it up here. It's time to quit. I appreciate everybody participating, and I appreciate all the questions. And this video is going to be unlisted until I decide to make it public. But it'll be available for Patreons and my subscribers to my exclusive videos. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great day. See ya.